Hepatitis, the condition in which a person's liver becomes inflamed, is considered a public health problem by the World Health Organization, the WHO. Medical personnel have rated the disease, which is usually caused by a virus, to be 100 times more virulent than HIV and AIDS. Our correspondent Marginally Yusuf reports.
Some diseases come with a lot of warning signals. This is not the case with hepatitis. Hepatitis, a condition in which the liver gets inflamed, only announces itself when a lot of liver function has been compromised.
It has synthetic functions. It produces some proteins like albumin. It helps to store. It's a storage organ. It stores fats. It stores glycogen, which is a form of glucose. The complications are usually long-term, and it occurs, especially in B, it occurs in up to 20 to 25% of patients that have the infection. So some of them may end up with cancers, liver cancers. Some of them will end up with liver cirrhosis.
The liver processes most of the substances, whether food, drugs, or whatever it is that gets into the body, modifies it in such a way that it is either useful, and if it is not useful, it is fit for it to be eliminated from the body.
Several things could lead to hepatitis infection, such as indiscriminate use of illegal or prescription drugs, bacteria or fungi, but it is more often caused by viruses named A to E. B and C are the most common viral causes in Nigeria. Experts are concerned that not enough is known about hepatitis, a disease purported to be 100 times more lethal than HIV and AIDS, because whereas the HIV virus would die several minutes after landing on an inanimate surface, the hepatitis virus would still be alive several months after. The only treatment for those surfaces would be undiluted bleach.
Unlike A and E that you can get from eating contaminated food or drinking contaminated drinks, B and C requires that the blood or blood product or tissue from an infected person come in contact with the blood of an uninfected person.
Some people have this habit of going for manicure and pedicure, where the same sharp object is being used for almost everybody that comes around. People that engage in tattoos and scarification marks in hospitals, blood should be screened for hepatitis, HIV, and some other infectious diseases.
In spite of what seem to be dire projections of a hepatitis infection, hepatitis B can be controlled and hepatitis C is curable. But doctors want a more involved and aggressive approach, one which would include prevention.
Vaccination for hepatitis B is very important. Fortunately, it's part of our immunization program in Nigeria, so we suspect that in the next 15-20 years, we'll be having fewer cases of hepatitis B infection in our adults.
If a woman is positive for hepatitis B virus, we start preparing towards delivery. The patient is going to get what we call hepatitis B immunoglobulin, which should be given to the baby within 12 hours of delivery. Somebody wants to marry, somebody wants to look for a job, and somebody wants to donate blood, or somebody is sick. Nigerian Medical Association and Ministry of Health, they are embarking on aggressive campaign to screen everybody.
Experts stress that vaccines are not just for babies, but adults who have been tested and found free of the virus. Those infected would be counseled and treated. Marginally Yusuf, Channels Television News.
The River State Police Command has arrested a university undergraduate who allegedly killed an 8-year-old girl for ritual purposes. The arrest of the suspect came less than 24 hours after the heinous crime that has left the family of the child in pains. The suspect was paraded alongside 3 suspected car snatchers and armed robbers. Let's quickly shift gears now, shall we, for business news, as Anne Waudo sits by to take us through. Anne?
Thanks a lot, Gimba, and welcome to Business News. The second trading week of August ends with lackluster performance across all major sectors, particularly the Industrial Goods Index. At the same time, the market's main index in value fell by 3.35%, despite the 1.66% recovery that was recorded yesterday. Compared with last week's trading, this week's transactions yielded a lower turnover of 1.39 billion units of shares in 23,133 deals. Financial services stock was the highest contributor to overall trading. In price performance, Cement Company of Northern Nigeria topped the list of 32 losers. Fitson led 18 gainers, while 101 equities were unchanged within the week. But just last week, the NSE was the world's best performing equities market after posting strong gains in July, but it then fell to third place behind Zimbabwe and Turkey. Let's see how the financial markets performed this week, beginning with the fixed income segment, where the overnight rates contracted by 4,637 basis points. The week started off with a surge in the overnight rate at 99.25% on Monday, while it contracted on Tuesday and for the remaining trading days of the week. Analysts expect liquidity to remain pressured as the central bank continues its intervention in the currency market. And checking out the Treasury bills market, the central bank fully allotted 62.44 billion naira worth of T-bills, comprising 32.44 billion naira and 30 billion naira of the 91-day and the 182-day bills. This was at lower stop rates of 13.35% and 17.35%. In the secondary market, activity remained bearish, with average yield expanding further by 25 basis points to 18.62% from 18.37% last week. In the meantime, positive trend on average yield is expected in the coming week. To the bond space now, where proceedings remained bearish, with marginal yield expansion as average yield inched by 2 basis points to 16.49%. Yields expanded at the short and the long ends of the curve. Dealers are expecting that demand in next week's bond auction will reflect liquidity position as investors take a cue from the auction stop rates. Zimbabwe today cancelled all flights between the country's capital, Harare, and South Africa's capital, Johannesburg. And this is coming a day after a Zimbabwe plane was grounded in the South African capital city. South Africa's restrictions come as the country's government weighs whether to grant diplomatic immunity to Zimbabwe's First Lady Grace Mugabe, who is accused of assaulting a young model at a luxury hotel in Johannesburg. In the meantime, South Africa's transport minister says he plans to meet with Zimbabwe's aviation agencies to find out why Zimbabwe failed to produce its foreign operating permit. And that's business news for tonight. Thanks a lot for watching. I'm Anne Waudo. The rest of the news at 10 continues now with Gimba.
Young leaders from all regions of the African continent assert that with the multiplicity of challenges confronting the developing world, youth, vigor, moral credibility and imaginative leadership is what is needed to take Africa to the next level. Young African leaders who have already made demonstrable impact on their communities through business development, public service and non-governmental work affirm that they can do much more together than they can apart. Mandela Washington Fellows convened a global summit of young African leaders in the U.S. capital of Washington, D.C., where they pledged to do more hands-on in navigating the affairs of the continent. Our correspondent Ajuri Ngalale reports.
Against the backdrop of aging leadership and globally non-competitive rates of youth participation in governance, young African change makers unify in common purpose to personify a new and greater chapter in African history. Together, in Washington, D.C., they affirm that Africa arises.
Good morning.
1,000 young leaders from across the continent say that the future is now and Africa's development trajectory depends on it.
Whereby its leaders combine in their efforts to solve the problems of the continent.
I pledged to leverage the wealth that can be found in the networks I developed on this very fellowship, collaborating with fellows across the length and breadth of our vast continent. And I did.
Beaten, battered, broken, raped, and robbed. And yet here we are, living the very hope and prayers of our families. They call it Africa, but we call it home.
Serving in their countries as young ministers, parliamentarians, elected officials, top professionals, and civil society activists. These young leaders network and collaborate in a bid to answer the call of over 1 billion Africans in search of new hope and development.
Stop reading how Japan did it. Stop reading how the US did it, because the US was solving a US problem. Read what the problem is in Africa and then think of how Africa will do it.
South Africa did not get independence on a platter of gold.
This is followed by insightful Q&A sessions with established continental leaders.
This generation should be a different type of generation.
Investing $100 million in young African entrepreneurs over the next 10 years, African business titan Tony Elumelu advises young Africans.
My confidence is rooted in the fact that these young Africans have great ideas, better ideas than I ever had in my own time. All they need is helping hand. And if they succeed, Africa succeeds.
The facilitating organization of the Mandela Washington Fellowship says its sustainability and potency lies in the inherent drive and networking capabilities of young leaders.
Because while I think it's incumbent on us all to make sure that the benefits of globalization are shared more broadly across societies, I think programs like this help to show the possibilities.
The potential extra income a girl will earn if she spends just one extra year in school.
Young African leaders present here represent the ingenuity, purpose, and potential of the next generation who remain yet undiscovered. Evidently, leadership with a service-centered perspective may soon become the norm as young Africans arise with the continent they now begin to lead. In Washington, D.C., Ajuri Ngalale reporting for Channels Television News.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Nigeria's home base Eagles secure passage to next year's African Nations Championships with 2-1 aggregate win over Benin Republic. That's the sports news. Stay with us.